Hey everybody, my name is Forbes Riley and welcome to Forbes Living, where we focus on health, wealth, and happiness. Now today my first guest is going to share a little bit about all of those things. She is representing a very timely topic. Perhaps you've been hearing about the use of pronouns. Perhaps you've been hearing about a transgender winning in a swim meet. And you're like, wow, what is going on here? Well, I'll tell you what, Miss Julia Buck has some answers. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Forbes. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right, so tell me about yourself.
Okay, so I was married with 2 children and very conservative, very religious. We basically lived at the church. And when my child was 14, this is in 2010, they came and said, I feel like I'm a girl in a boy's body.
Okay, and you have how many children?
2.
And this is your younger child?
Correct.
And so born a biological boy?
Correct.
And you had no reason to suspect at all anything might have been different?
No, not at all. I was shocked.
Well, do you find that unusual? Now, again, one of the things on the mission that you're on is to help parents come to grips with this conversation.
Right.
But so for 14 years, no indication?
Not really, no. Mm-mm.
Okay. And then one day you sit down and your daughter's name is what?
Allison.
And Allison says?
I'm a girl in a boy's body.
Wow, what was your reaction?
I was shocked. I was blindsided.
What was Allison's name before?
Casey.
Casey, okay.
And I said, I know you're a boy. I'm your mom and I was there when you were born. And that wasn't very supportive. And basically for the next 3 years, she just dealt with it on her own. She didn't want to talk to me because I really wasn't open to it. And I did nothing to educate myself. I was afraid that the liberal people would try to brainwash me or something. So I just stuck my head in the sand and went on with life as usual.
What about your husband?
Pretty similar reaction.
Just
Yes.
like, we're not going to deal with this and whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, well, I took her to a therapist, and my goal with the therapist was to have her straighten out her head.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that. I starred in a movie called Megiddo, which is a very religious Christian movie. And at the screening, I had a woman come up to me, and she was so excited to see how we could help heal gay people. And I looked at her like she had 2 heads. I'd never heard anyone say that before. But apparently there is a sect of people who think it needs to be healed. You've come to understand that that's not the case.
Yes, I did.
Well, what was that transition like for you?
Well, first of all, the 3 years were horrible for our family and my child. It was filled with depression, anxiety, hospitalizations, suicide attempts. It was bad.
Because she was that upset about it.
Yeah.
Now, help me understand, because I've never experienced this. So you've got a 14-year-old biological boy that you think is a boy. For the 3 years, what started to change? Was it dressing? Was it haircut? Was it hormones? What happened? Or nothing happened?
No, nothing happened. And so she was distraught because she had built up the courage to tell us, and then we weren't supportive.
And her sister, supportive or no?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happens now at 3 years? Because I've seen pictures of Casey, now Allison. Mm-hmm. There is definitely a difference.
Yes.
Allison looks very much like a girl.
Yes. So what happened was when, right before she turned 17, she said, Mom, I have to move forward with or without you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she didn't know then what I would say or whether she'd get kicked out of the house. Fortunately, by that time, I was ready to support her. And I said, I'm going with you.
Wow. And so what was that journey like?
So I first looked for support groups, and immediately I walked in and it was like, oh, these people are normal. The co-leaders, one was a transgender man. The woman had a transgender son that was at Stanford University. All the parents, nobody was trying to coerce their kids to be transgender or anything. They were just parents doing the best they could with a difficult life situation.
What percentage of people in this country or around the world are transgender?
1.7%.
1.7%, which in a country of 300 million is 3 million people.
Yes.
Okay. Now you have an interesting statistic about what 1.7% also means.
That is the same number of people that have red hair.
Okay, which I just thought was kind of adorable when you said it, because we all know somebody who's a redhead.
Yeah.
But the difference is, and I think this is important for all of you listeners to understand, you can see certain things and you can't see certain things. I grew up with probably about 5 very flamboyant boy friends, mostly in the theater department, and we didn't know what gay or straight was back then at all. And sure enough, they became gay. Now, I'm sure there were a lot of, not became, they were. There were a lot of boys and girls. My best friend, I told you, was also gay as a girl. Her dad was as well. Now, can you imagine growing up in the 50s? He hid that all until well after his kids graduated school, because that was not acceptable. He was a very well-respected pharmacist, and definitely what the in the closet meant. And to look at him, you would never think anything. So, and this is an educational thing, and I think you're about educating all of us. When I look at my cross-dressers, very hairy girls. They're wearing dresses, but they don't go through any kind of hormones, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. What am I calling? Drag queens. That is a fun, interesting. Again, not necessarily gay, not necessarily cross-dressers. That's its whole thing. And now you've got this word transgender. Will you help me understand, what does it mean?
So transgender is kind of an umbrella term, so it does mean different things. For my child, she identified as trans, like going across against. So she went from male to female, biologically.
Now, here's another question, and forgive my naivete, but it's 17 years old. You guys decided to go down the road of transitioning.
Correct.
What does that entail?
Affirming hormone therapy.
Okay.
Changed her name, changed her birth certificate legally.
Really?
Yeah. And just her presentation. You know, she grew her hair and...
Now, when you're doing hormones, do other things change? I mean, parts of your body change.
Yes, parts of your body change.
And again, I don't know what would be easier or harder to go from a boy to a girl or girl to a boy. Is there statistics on that about how kids deal with that? Or do they want to change or do they not want to change?
Everybody's different. Some don't transition at all. Everybody, different levels, different experiences. Every single one is different. So
your mission, and as much as it's interesting to talk about your daughter, is to help parents, because that's the big issue right now. And this is something that's really important. I do a lot of work with people, and it always goes back to mom and dad. You either had them, didn't have them, they were abusive, they weren't abusive, they were too rich, not rich enough. We always seem to blame mom and dad. But you need love.
Right.
And so I think that part of your mission is really about solidifying a home life and talking to parents.
Right.
Because what's the first thing that we need to know as parents?
The first thing is to show your kid, I mean, you brought them into the world, right? They didn't ask to be here. So first, you tell them you love them, and you love them no matter what, and then you go away and start educating yourself.
Okay, what are the things that you need to learn?
I learned like the science behind it, and like your brain, your gender develops at a different time than your body biological sex does in
utero?
Yeah.
All right. So your brain says you're a boy or a girl at some point, and your body says you're a boy or girl at some point?
At different points.
Oh, interesting.
So if the mom's hormones are off or different, yeah.
But when do you tend to notice? Again, I'm going to go back to my own life story. My daughter and son, they're twins, grew up with a little boy named Brandon, who when he was about 5 years old, showed up in a red Power Rangers outfit because my son was having a Power Rangers birthday, twin party. She was having a dance fairy party, and he showed up in a Power Rangers outfit with a pink tutu. 5 years old, and we all were like, this is interesting. He had 2 very theatrical parents who put no judgment on him at all, but we were all going, he's in the bedroom with McKenna, a little girl, playing with her dolls, and she's like, Mommy, I don't understand why he doesn't want to play with Riker and his toys. Might that be a sign?
That might be a sign. So we're supposed to know our gender at about 3, 4, 5. Like I never had to think about it. Right. I was a girl. Like it never entered my mind that I wasn't. But for my daughter, she struggled. Like, what is wrong with me? What is different? I don't fit in. Something's wrong. Something's not right. And she got very angry with God. Like, why did you give me this body I can't relate to? And I remember her asking us, you know, is my voice changing?
Oh, at puberty?
Yeah. Yeah, it's rough. It's right, because you're just confused.
Also, little lack of role models here. You know, until Caitlyn Jenner transitioned, and I know Bruce. And that was probably a pretty healthy role model, somebody who's a decathlon athlete who says, I'm now a woman, I've always been a woman. And it's like, wow, that's interesting to have gone through and witnessed.
Right.
But it's not like we have every model. You know, I can find a role model for every kind of woman I want. I would imagine there's more and more now. In the time, how old is Allison at the moment?
26.
So this is now from the time she was 14. This has been a journey for you, hasn't it?
It has.
And so you're on a mission.
I
to do
am
what?
on a mission. So I've been a national speaker for the Human Rights Campaign and Gender Spectrum on how you can be both traditionally religious and LGBTQ affirming.
Okay, so give me a little insight into that.
Well, there's a lot of different perspectives I can give on it. The one that I will get into, because we're on limited time here, is what did Jesus do? How did he treat people, especially the ostracized, right?
Yeah. Kind of with open arms, and he welcomed everybody. But somehow that's not quite how some religions have evolved in his name. Do you agree?
I agree.
And so what do you do when you have that struggle?
Well, I have a program for parents that we look at all that. And, you know, they can share their concerns, their confusion, their conflicted feelings. And it's a process, individual process for everyone, that they go through so that they can discern for themselves what's the right way for their individual family situation.
Julia, I would love you to look at my camera there and talk to a mom or a dad who are going through what you went through way back then and how what you're doing supports them.
Okay. So I was alone and I didn't reach out for support because I didn't trust anyone to be in a similar situation that I was in. And I'm just here to let you know that there are myself and other parents, we're here to support you because it's confusing, it's different. So,
and where do they find out more about you? And you have a new book coming out we'll talk about in just a second. Where do they reach out to you?
At mentorwithjulia.com.
And what will they find there?
They will find information, free information, link to my website, information about my program,
I love that.
And a way to contact me.
Which I think is, I love that you're putting yourself out there. I love that you found a mission. Are you happy that this has been your journey?
Oh, yes. I feel now, I thank my daughter for being the catalyst that changed my heart and mind to be more inclusive and loving. And I view it as a blessing from God.
See, I think that's probably the biggest message about how you view it now. And how you have transitioned as well. You are a trans mom because you went from one way of thinking to a much more open way of thinking. What is your hope for everybody?
My hope is that people can become more educated and they can support and love their children and others in the trans community, and that the trans community can thrive in our culture and be contributing, honored members, because they have a lot to offer.
And absolutely, and I think that's been the problem with judgments all along. And unfortunately, we're a society that loves to judge on so many ridiculous levels. So I'm grateful that you're out there educating, because that is the big differential that will help cut down on suicide,
Yes.
help cut down on depression, cut down on family units shattering apart because they have no skills.
Can I give you another statistic?
Oh, yeah.
About 50% of transgender, 40 to 50, have attempted to commit suicide. If they have one accepting adult in their life, the rate of suicide attempts goes down to the normal level.
Wow.
And the parent doesn't have to be super supportive. They just have to be not unsupportive, just accepting.
Well, I watched a lot of my very dear gay friends, because most of them came out, it was the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s, where it still was not culturally accepted, especially by the religious community.
Yeah.
And so my heart goes out to you, because the work that you're doing is allowing the glue to reform in relationships that are needed for society to function. We can't keep pulling each other apart. And we are all so vastly different. Is there anything that you've not shared that was on your heart that you want to talk to me about?
No, I just hope people will be open enough to learn.
Well, I think with you as a spokesperson, and I've got to say that there's no accidents here. You know, they say that God never gives you more than you can handle. Well, welcome to the stage, Miss Julia Buck. The buck stops here.
That's right.
Between that and Allison, and I'm excited to show the transition photos because your daughter looks like your daughter. Now, before we go, I do want to ask one thing. There is a little bit of a backlash here with this pronoun thing. Will you explain pronouns to me?
So, people have their own identity. You have your identity, or identities, I do. And so it's just rude to call someone by a name that isn't theirs. So if I say, I did an interview with Forbes Riley and he was wonderful, how's that feel?
A little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Sometimes people think Forbes is a guy. Yeah, okay.
So it's just a matter of respect.
And then there's the pronoun. Well, I like to call myself we. I'm the crown. We like to do this. No, I'm just kidding. Although I think it's a good pronoun for me. But the they pronoun. Explain this to me, because you and I talked off camera, and I want my audience to experience this.
So they is used as a plural, but we in our society also use it in the singular. So it's not, people think that it's just plural, but it's not.
So is it for transgender only? Do you have to?
No, anybody. Most of the people that, some of the people that use the they pronoun are non-binary. They don't identify with the male, and they don't identify with the female.
Okay.
So they don't want to say he or she, so they choose them.
I think it's a fascinating thing. Again, part of our program here is to educate. I had never heard anyone talk about that before I met you, and I appreciate it. And I think that a lot of parents are going to appreciate you. What is the title of a book that we're going to look forward to reading from you, my girl?
Today, the title is Identity.
Okay. So. And we'll see, again, it's a beautiful journey that you're going on. Yeah. Why the word identity?
Because that is the core. And people say, well, you don't act on how you feel, but it's your identity is who you are. It's hard to explain it. The best way is that I never had to think about whether I was a girl or not.
Right.
So how can you say somebody's wrong for thinking the way they think? I thought I was a girl. I still do think I'm a girl.
Right.
So am I wrong?
It's only up to you, isn't it?
Yeah, because you're the one that feels it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a whole lot of things to identity. How you describe who you are, what you do, what your cultural background is, what city you come from, what state you come from, what country you come from. We identify all over the place.
That's right.
And I don't think it's been brought to the forefront. So I'm excited, and I do hope this book is an absolute bestseller.
Thank you.
Gotta say. All right, everybody, my name is Forbes Riley. You've been watching the Forbes Living. And today's topic has just been so educational and brilliant. I adore Miss Julia Buck and her 2 daughters, and hope that every mother and father finds a level of acceptance with the children they brought into this world. As a mom, it's a strong, strong hope of mine. And with that, I'll see you guys again next time. Thanks so much for watching.